It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by the Riverview Hospital in Wisconsin Rapids and Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. Now, with the Morning Magazine, here's Carl Hilke.
Thank you, Jerry, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's show on AM 1320, as well as on the web at WFHR.com, and we also welcome our friends from River City's Community Access Television, and their website is wrpeg.org, and they're here taping this broadcast, which you can later watch on Charter Cable Channel 96 or Digital 985 or Solaris Channel 3. And with that, we welcome the Mayor of Wisconsin Rapids, Zach Vruwink, who is here for the entire program, and our phone lines are open this morning at 424-2600, pound 1320 on your U.S. cellular phone. With that, we say good morning to His Honor. Good morning, Mayor Vruwink.
Good morning, Carl.
Okay, well, Common Council night last night, and I want to talk about a couple of things and then get into some of the stuff going on in Madison, but there was a resolution to naming September 8th as International Migratory Bird Day in the city of Wisconsin Rapids. Sometimes people wonder, what's the purpose of these type of resolutions before a governmental body?
Well, this was an interesting one, given the fact that we recently have had some debate about our methods to deal with the goose population that we have along the riverbanks. But yeah, this was an opportunity that residents, similar to the Tree City USA proposal that the city has been a part of for many years, I think will become the 67th municipality around the state to join and sign on to the Bird City USA, or Bird City Wisconsin, piece to draw attention to migratory songbirds, essentially. Okay.
You mentioned the bird feeding. There was a request from Jim Borski that the city create an ordinance to ban feeding waterfowl. Now, the Finance and Property Committee decided we're going to hold that over and get more public input, and there was no effort to last night on the floor to circumvent that. What kind of input are you hearing from your office, and have you voiced an opinion on this?
Sure. It's been very mixed. I certainly haven't kept a tally one for one, essentially, of what people's feedback has been or where people's positions are on it. I know that council members have gotten some feedback, and I'd encourage residents to continue to send, whether it's an email, a phone call, or something in the mail to myself and to their city council members as to their feelings on it. I did come out publicly in the situation to say that I wouldn't support a feeding ban that would cover all waterfowl. I know that governmental entities are known for enacting legislation and things that they don't necessarily think if it's enforceable or not. And this is one of those situations where I know many residents take pride in feeding the ducks, and this certainly would cover the ducks as well. And I called for, if we're going to ban the feeding of geese in parallel, essentially, with our efforts to deal with the geese population, that we've banned the feeding of them. But again, it'd be very difficult, in my opinion, nearly impossible, to enforce such a resolution.
Yeah, okay, and then that leads to the question, whenever government adopts an ordinance that it knows it's going to be difficult to enforce, then why adopt it?
Right, exactly, and go through the motions. I did indicate to a couple of residents that if the council did have strong feelings that they wanted to support it, I would definitely entertain vetoing it. It's certainly something that they could overturn if there was the support for it. But frankly, I know the conversation has been, we've already agreed, the council's already made the decision regarding dealing with the geese population, and so the waterfowl ban, in my opinion, didn't need to happen, and Jim Borski has agreed and confirmed that with the DNR that we don't necessarily need to enact a waterfowl ban in coordination with our efforts to deal with the geese population.
All we need is normal winters, and the birds will migrate someplace warmer.
You bet.
You've been making, your business prior to becoming city mayor was in computers and technology, and the item for a part-time communications social media intern. Could you explain that one?
Sure. So at the previous month's council meeting, there was a conversation had about a grant opportunity that we were approached by Encourage Community Foundation to apply with them as a co-applicant, and using the Community Foundation as the lead, regarding an opportunity to investigate what platforms might exist for us to introduced into city government to allow residents to participate and submit ideas for whether it's a project or just to gauge feedback from people. Maybe the geese population could be one of those ways that we could introduce a new online way for people to give feedback. So that was introduced at the previous month's council meeting. Given the conversation at that meeting and kind of in parallel, kind of an initiative or a motivation of mine is to introduce more of an online social media presence for the way city government communicates with residents. So whether it's just general awareness of the Park and Rec Department of park facilities opening and closing, whether the warming houses are open or close, or the skate park or anything related to that historically government operates via news releases to newspaper and obviously to the radio stations. Well, we realize that residents now are accessing information more on demand. So in addition to the newspaper and into the radio, they're also on social media platforms, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or any new platform that might be in existence. So the point that I made at the council meeting is that if we don't start creating these avenues for engagement with residents, we're going to have a difficulty bringing people along and engaging the public of all ages. And it even skews more to the younger demographic, but it skews all demographics.
Businesses are increasingly using social media to advertise specials that you can only find out if you go on their Twitter account or go on their Facebook page.
Yes, and it's cheaper, and oftentimes it can be free. There's been some research done. There was a white paper I was reading recently that online presence costs 80% less, or an online method of communicating is 80% less time and money, essentially, to interact. So you're much quicker than picking up the phone and leaving a voicemail and having that callback process and all that. So the position that the council approved a stipend for last night is a 3-month position. It's an internship position. My hope is that we'll find somebody, whether they're pursuing a degree in digital media or digital communication, to apply. Maybe a college student, maybe somebody that's recently graduated from college, or somebody that just has a general experience. So we're accepting applications for that position. 3 months is essentially the term. It's 15 to 20 hours a week, some less, some more. But it'll allow us to craft that strategy and that plan for how my department and every other department is going to communicate and engage with residents.
Well, that also gets into business development, because companies that are looking at prospective sites or communities to look for now have IT departments or people in social media that are going out and doing searches.
Absolutely.
and handing that information over to their site teams or whatever and saying, okay, just found out about Wisconsin Rapids. They have this.
Right. Yeah, site selectors absolutely are doing it online. You could ask any realtor in town with any prospect that they are ever reached out to. The first place they go is to their MLS online listing, because that's where the property information is readily available. It's fast. It's a lot easier to access. And in that vein, essentially what you're talking about, absolutely, that we need to have that online presence. If you go to our city website, there's limited information available about access to sites, even just access to resources. So we need to start somewhere, and this is our first step to starting to build that online presence.
Okay, and that leads into what's been going on downtown. Obviously, the Yonkers store closing, but and there was talk about, folks, this was something, a corporate decision, and involved more than just Wisconsin Rapids.
I'm glad you bring it up.
Elder Bierman is reorganizing, basically.
Right.
And they're deciding, okay, we're going to close these stores, we're going to close it. What are you hearing about? We had heard through the grapevine or what have you that there's actually been some prospects actually looking already at that facility.
Sure. And I'll clarify a little bit about my effort that I've employed in the last number of months since we've heard of the announcement. And I've publicly talked about this. I've left a number of voicemails with the ownership of the mall since I've taken office, and frankly, I've never gotten a phone call back. I mean, they're based in California. You leave a voicemail on a line, and you don't get a call back. If the mall doesn't want to retain the store, what effort is going to be any fruitful, having to bear any fruit essentially of my position. So it's been unfortunate because frankly, I'm a shopper of Yonkers. Most of the suits I wear come from Yonkers, the one I'm wearing today. So it's going to leave a void, but in the void, there's also opportunity. And I think that's what you're touching on right now with prospects. Yes, there has been some interest. We haven't received names, and of course, those confidentiality pieces fall into place, so we can't speak about names. But in any sort of void or departure of any department store or any retail or any business for that matter creates an opportunity for somebody. So obviously, JCPenney still remains in the mall, and they offer some similar lines. And I know I've talked with some people recently, and they're introducing new lines, given the fact that JCPenney is also going through kind of a reorganization. If you go onto Bon-Ton's website, the parent company for Yonkers, there are a number of other closures on there in states like Michigan and the like. So we're not an anomaly. We're not alone in the closure process. They've been very mum about it, and it hasn't hit real national headlines because Bon-Ton does have many brands they operate under. So Yonkers just happens to be one of those. But absolutely, it's sad, and it's going to close here very soon, is from what my understanding is. But it allows us to now look at where are the holes. And there's been a lot of talk about holes in the sporting goods space and people having to drive to a Plover or to a Wausau to do their shopping related to sporting goods. So, I think there's some opportunities there that we could do some attraction and recruitment in those areas.
Say like a Dunham's coming
right,
to
something
Wisconsin?
like that, exactly, yeah.
Okay. You mentioned JCPenney and the ownership. I want to talk a little bit about both. JCPenney, have they made, there's fear now, well, Yonkers gone, bye-bye JCPenney.
Well, the silver lining would be likely an uptick in JCPenney sales, I would imagine.
You would think so, because guys like, if you've been buying suits from Yonkers, you got to go find somewhere
other else. Exactly. I think the challenge nationally is people are buying things online. I can buy something from an online shoe store because we don't have a good shoe selection in town, and I can return it for free online or through the mail. So why have to have a retail store with the overhead? I mean, I know retail business too well to know that it's a difficult business to be in, and when a national retailer looks at dollars and thresholds. Frankly, the Yonkers store was successful, which is sad, in that respect, that a corporate decision would be to close a store that's successful. But it's going to leave a lot of opportunities for somebody to take on. But I think, to the point about JCPenney, if they were smart, they would evaluate that location and bring additional lines in to complement the closure of Yonkers.
And that leads to, you mentioned about the new ownership of the mall.
Right.
Previous administrations had a good relationship because it was a local owner.
Local ownership, yep, exactly.
Now you're dealing with someone from California.
Right.
Is that going to hurt in the long term in terms of the development or the maintenance of that mall or the viability of it?
I think anybody that walks through the mall today can say that there's been some deferred maintenance to it. And unfortunately, that leaves an impression in people's minds, whether they're residents or visitors. And knowing as a business owner, you want to appeal to people and have a good appearance when people are shopping. And I think any national retailer, if they were to walk through that mall today, would maybe agree that there hasn't been enough investment in it. Now, again, retail's a challenging business, and I'm sure their profitability would dictate how much they can invest back into the mall. But overall, that whole footprint, it's a very large parcel of land, and we have to be concerned about any major tenant or anchor store leaving the mall and what kind of long-term effects, domino effect that might leave down the road.
And then you have those buildings in front of the mall.
Yeah, right.
One of which the Tribune moved to, but you got what used to be a Wendy, and to me, the way that was developed is not very accessible.
It's a bit of a challenge. Yeah, there's the outlots that, it was nice. It was more tax base essentially generated because of the parcels there. But, in speaking with some of the owners of the strip mall and of the Wendy's property recently, they're still actively recruiting and actively looking to fill those vacancies. The ownership of the strip mall happens to be in Appleton, and I spoke with him, and he's got some prospects. But again, you have to get those commitments and get a lease signed and obviously get the capital flowing. So he also owns the Dollar General store and is very, very successful in that space. But like any other retail development, there needs to be a concerted effort to find where the complementary and the niche markets might exist or the holes in the marketplace.
Of course, economic development depends a lot on transportation. How's that for a segue, folks? Mm-hmm. There was a resolution last night to grant the Wood County Highway Commission the power to act as the lead agency for the State Transportation's 2014-2015 STP freight application to build the East Side bypass from County Trunk Highway W to County Trunk Highway Z.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of talk for seems like a long time now about this project. What are your thoughts about it?
Well, yeah, to give you a sense, yesterday in a meeting with the highway commissioner, there's been documents dating back to the 70s on this. So clearly it's been a long time coming. The STP freight program was attention given by the governor saying we have issues moving freight through communities across our state. And if we can't get freight to move expediently, they're going to locate in areas where it's more convenient. So nobody likes to say the state has money to build new roads when they have an issue maintaining the roads that they already have. But this is an opportunity for us that's already been, the feasibility study's been conducted. A lot of the legwork has been done over the past number of decades. A lot of the right-of-way has already been acquired, whether it's from by the city or anybody else. So in terms of turnkey and ability to apply for the grant, we're definitely in a good position. It's got a fast turn. Obviously, a fast turn to apply. June 28th is when the application has to be into the state. So we had to act last night at our council meeting to get them to allow the county then to apply on our behalf. The idea would be that it'd be a county trunk road. It wouldn't carry a state highway yet, so it wouldn't have the 54 designation, but it could have something in the future.
Would it be a 4-lane or a 2-lane?
The grant application would be a 4-lane, so it'd be built to the same standard that it's built from coming into the city up until the Home Depot W intersection. So the intent, it would be, the nice thing is it's an 80-20 match, so I believe the program, the project would be estimated about $10 million, so the county would be committed for the 20%, so about $1 million is what they're estimating, and the state would be on the hook for the rest. And again, they've got their scoring criteria. It's simply an application, but you can't win if you don't play, and this is an opportunity for us to submit an application that could have some nice dividends down the road.
And this is an example of how governments have to work together. In your case, you have to work with your counterpart, County Board Chairman Lance Plimmel, and the staff over at the county to coordinate things and present a unified picture to try and get this grant.
Yeah, and it's a great opportunity for us to collaborate. And given the fact that the city has taken action over recent years to acquire the right-of-way, it puts the county in a position to be able to apply for the application and, frankly, get it built much quicker than any other corridor that might be another application. So it's going to allow us to score higher.
If you get this grant, when might... in a realistic sense.
Yeah.
When might we actually start seeing some work on this?
Well, I asked that question yesterday because we saw what happened with Highway 10 and obviously the federal dollars for that and decades and decades and decades for that to happen. And this is another classic case that it's been decades. But this is the first opportunity for us to get it funded, or at least not the first opportunity, but real opportunity for us to get it funded. Construction conceivably would have to begin within 3 years. That's the requirement of the application.
Okay.
A shovel has to be turned within 3 years. Otherwise, you have to pay those dollars back to the state.
So the clock starts ticking, in other words.
So mid-August, we'll know if we were a recipient, which would allow us then to go with the environmental piece, hire the consultants, and the county will be the lead agent on all of this, which allows the city to be more nimble in terms of what bike path, aesthetics, the lighting commitments we'll have to make, acquiring the right-of-way that remains. There's going to be some disruption in that area, obviously, if we're awarded it. But with any sort of infrastructure investment, there's always going to be the need to take more of a footprint. And so this is an opportunity, I think, from an economic development sense that absolutely makes sense. It allows us to deal with the safety issues of A Street, to get a lot of the through truck traffic, the semi-traffic off of that road, and that's where the freight program comes into play.
And that's where you also see some of the problems with near accidents or problems. I see truckers trying to work their way through an 8th Street traffic jam, and especially during rush hours, and it's scary sometimes.
Yeah, peak travel times, especially you've got a school crossing, at least one across A Street. You've got another one on the north side that isn't so affected by a lot of the truck route traffic. The stop and go lights, that time is money, and so when trucks are stopping, there's more cost involved. It's a delay.
And people try to get around them because it takes them a while to get up to speed.
Right. So this would allow them to connect up across to the east side of the city, then without any disruptions. You'll only have major intersections like you do now with with Chestnut Street and with Baker and the like. So it'd be the same kind of modeling as you would see with the bypass that exists from Baker essentially down to the Home Depot W corridor.
And since we're talking transportation, before we get to our first break, Mayor Vruwink, Ralph Hamill had asked to use truck route streets to access RCH during the reconstruction of First Street North and the construction of the roundabout at the courthouse from New Page and Corenzo. Let's talk to residents so that they are aware of, and you don't start getting inundated with calls. Right. Hey, what's all this truck traffic?
Truck traffic, yeah. Well, it happens to be one of the consequences of doing First Street and the roundabout project, obviously. And speaking of timelines, Dave Lasper reminded us it was over 10 years that project has been in the works. So, we talk about a bypass and having to turn a shovel in 3 years, begin construction in 3 years, is a pretty quick turn. But related to the piece where you talked about with the alternative truck routes, essentially, the compromise was held that was made to use the not roundabout, but a longer access route, so not to use those residence streets, given the fact that they weren't built to truck route standards, essentially, like First Street was. So they will be taking Baker up and around as opposed to cutting through those residential streets. The challenge for us was in public finance. It's a complex world, but if you live on a truck route, so if you live on First Street, you get a 30% discount because of the extra truck route traffic that would be used to kind of degrade the street over the years. So you get a discount, essentially. And because those residential streets were not built to truck standards, they're going to deteriorate faster. Now, there's debate about how fast and all that sort of thing, but the reality is that there would be some sort of wear and tear on those streets. So those residents required to pick up the full tab or not. So that's where the conversation really was had. The challenge, again, related to the bypass conversation is how many stop signs, how many minutes, how many miles, truck miles is it going to cost? And we all know the mileage standards on a semi are not what they are in a car, so every mile counts. So trying to be business friendly with New Page and Corenzo and the other users of the RCH property, and that's Ralph's obviously chief concern, is how can we manage and kind of compromise in this space. So we've determined what's the disruption. It's 3 months in 3 or 4 months in 2013, and 3 or 4 months in 14, provided weather and all that sort of stuff goes straight. But we're hoping that that's a disruption, and we can work out some sort of compromise to get trucks. So once the city's done doing its underground stuff, they can still access those streets.
It's kind of like similar to what Lance Plimo and the Wood County Board have been facing with with these agreement with the frac sand haulers.
Yeah.
You need to get the frac sand, but we don't want to pay the bill for the for the fix up of the highway, because if it ends up costing us more money in the end, it's a losing proposition for Wood County.
So there's always a cost involved, and it's always going to come down to who's going to pay for it. And I've always been a proponent, if there's some sort of compromise or shared investment that can be made, private sector and public sector, that way no one entity is picking up the entire tab.
Speaking of investment, well, the state legislature is about to make its final decisions on how they will invest our tax dollars, and I want to get Mayor Vruwink's thoughts on that when the Morning Magazine continues. Again, our phone lines are open at 715-424-2600, pound 1320 on your U.S. cellular phone. We're visiting with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink here on the Morning Magazine, which, as always, is brought to you by Riverview Medical Center. With you, it's personal and Comfort Air.
I'm Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink, and today we're at Witter Park, home of historic Witter Field here in Wisconsin Rapids. Excited to talk about what's new and exciting here at Witter Field for the upcoming season with the Wisconsin Rapids Rafters. We're excited to announce that we just signed an 8-year extension with the Wisconsin Rapids Rafters to lease our city-owned park here at Witter Field. Over the course of 8 years, we're going to bring in $143,000 in revenue from them in terms of their lease payments. Additionally, any improvements that they make to Witter Field are ours. So if they decide, or if at some point the Rafters do not continue to operate here for whatever reason, we hope that's not the case, the improvements will become the property and are the property of the City of Wisconsin Rapids. The scoreboard was purchased by the City of Wisconsin Rapids as per the lease agreement with which we had with them. So the lease arrangement, which is an 8-year lease, generates guaranteed of $143,000 in lease revenue. Additionally, there's another $80,000 that the Rafters have pledged to to invest $10,000 over 8 years, essentially, of the lease to invest here at Whitterfield. We've got the new rat trap deck that's going to be opened and unveiled. It's already been unveiled here at Whitterfield, and additionally, the scoreboard is one of those things that we committed to do. Also, as part of the lease, they've guaranteed to bring back the All-Star game at some point in the near future, and we will also be repainting the grandstand at some point to remove the seafoam green color off the stands. I would say the Wisconsin Rapids Rafters play a very integral part in terms of vibrancy to our community. Not only do our residents get to come out on any given night in the summer where you can, if you show up to Whitterfield, it's hard to find a place where you can find 1,500 to 2,000 fans on a given night in one location during the course of many nights in the summer. So not only from the residents' perspective, it's a great place for residents to have a good time, to spend a night for some cheap, affordable entertainment, but also for people that are just visiting the area to come in, whether they're from the opposing team, to come and spend a night in Wisconsin Rapids and see what we're all about. But it's a great place to do that.
Once again, here's Carl Hilke.
Thank you, Jerry, and welcome back, everybody, to today's show on AM 1320, as well as on the web at WFHR.com. And remember, you can watch cablecast of this on River City's Community Access Television. They're here videotaping our conversation this morning, and the phone lines are open at 424-2600, pound 1320 on your U.S. cellular phone, as we're visiting with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink. Well, Mr. Mayor, the state legislature is going to be at least one house hoping to adopt a budget today. Now, they've made some changes. Let's see. The vote is set for 5:30 this afternoon. One of the things they did involved keeping people away from the Gogebic Taconite's exploration drilling site. But it did say here they've decided to take out. They decided not to have the state take over local stormwater control standards. And the GOP also ordered a one-year delay on rules, and I know this one is of interest to folks in Saratoga. They ordered a one-year delay on rules, which make it easier for mega dairies to install high-capacity wells. Mm-hmm. But this, I was reading an analysis by a towns association or various municipal groups, and I don't care what party you are. I mean, I took on the Democrats when they were in power about unfunded mandates, and you have them in this budget. Mm-hmm. There's a whole bunch of various areas where, for instance, the GOP is telling municipalities, you can't adopt an ordinance telling people how big of a soda they can buy. Why they have to get involved with that, I don't know. And you have drunk driving stand. Now, that's all well and good, but as the sheriff, when he was here, pointed out, there are costs involved, and they don't pass along any extra help to try and enforce these things. So basically, it seems to be, regardless of party, a Madison affliction to decide, we know what problems to solve in this state, and gosh darn it, we're going to tell people how to do it. Mm-hmm. How frustrated is that for a mayor?
You know, it's been interesting to watch the comedy that's been happening in Madison, frankly. The budget is full of policy. Everyone agrees. Republicans, Democrats, it is loaded with policy. And what's sad is during the campaign cycle, they campaign on not putting policy in the budget.
Everybody says, I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. We believe in local control. And then they get to Madison.
Yeah. It's a financial document. And frankly, when those that are in the legislature now were at local elected office, some of them, they like the local control. But when you get to Madison, you've got the power and you have the ability to have state control. They're going to exercise their muscle. And unfortunately, that has left municipalities in kind of a precarious position. And you talk about unfunded mandates. You know, the budget also is, in my opinion, is full of contradictions, right? So you talk about local municipalities can't tell how much, what size soda can be sold in the city. Well, you know, they got scared because of Mayor Bloomberg out in New York City saying, well, you know what, we're going to limit the size of sodas that can be consumed in the city. Well,
that's a local decision. If they want to do that,
let them do it. And obviously, local elected officials are closest to the residents. So obviously, they can pick up the phone. I can have a conversation with them, meet with them. But we know our residents best. And if a community is having health challenges, for example, and one of the ways to deal with that is to limit the amount of consumption of beverages, they can do that and should be able to do that. That is the local elected officials' power. And if the residents don't want it, that's not going to happen.
Well, right. If they don't like it, they they can throw the local officials out.
Yeah. And the campaigns run on economic growth and creating jobs and all this sort of thing. And you start looking at the policy and the budget and some of the late night kind of hearings and discussions they've had on some of these issues, it baffles me. It certainly makes your job as a reporter and some others kind of a field day with this.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's so much happening that you have one hand, you want the municipality not to be able to control the soda consumption. And then the other hand, you're going to impose mandates as you're talking, but then you're going to impose further levy limits. And it's like, well, you can't raise any more tax dollars, so therefore you're going to have to cut something out of your budget. It is just a comedy. It is absolutely just very entertaining to watch.
But it's not the way, like you mentioned, it's supposed to be a budget document.
Right, it's a financial document.
It should be limited to financial items only. And I have problems with both parties when they go into their secret caucuses and start deciding how to spend my tax dollar.
Right. Yep.
I mean, that kind of stuff should be debated in the open where everybody's cards are on the table and we can all find out what's on everybody's agenda.
Right. It's not a good demonstration of transparency. I would definitely say that. I look at our budget process in the city and the local control, and there isn't any policy that's dictated or mandated really through that budget process. It certainly sets frameworks and parameters, but it isn't going to include any sort of policy decision or ordinances because it's not. That's the way it doesn't work that way. I should say, and it's. Who knows what the final document's going to look like? It's a $70 billion budget. There's a ton of a ton of concern about long-term debt. There was the piece about returning the tax break back to the average, to the family, to any sort of income taxpayer. It just baffles me. It really does.
Yeah. Well, they're talking about going from surplus to starting the next budget cycle in a deficit again because.
Right, the Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance has done some nice kind of just analysis of this that for all of us that's one of my main with the piece, understand it.
I'm glad you brought them up. And folks, they're a nonpartisan group. All they do is look at numbers. They're like an accountant looking at your budget. Yep. And they look at the numbers and they go, here's what it says.
Yeah, right.
And if you're looking for good objective analysis of what's going on in Madison, you can just Google Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance and you can get on their website and download their various papers and everything else, that their analysis of this thing. And they're kind of going, okay.
Right. Just the borrowing and the long-term debt piece, it's concern. And, I kind of like to call myself kind of a fiscal conservative in many respects. And it really comes down to starting to follow the dollar and where it goes. And when campaign cycle rolls around here again this time next year, there's going to be so much conversation around job growth and creation of jobs and all that sort of thing. And really, if that's the case, then why isn't the test, if this doesn't have a economic development or any sort of job growth connection, why are we including it in the budget? Why is it even a priority? And I hope that residents and those constituents put pressure on these elected officials and say, what did you do? Why is that connected? Why was that a priority over some other piece?
Yeah, and some of these policy items, I know some of you might favor some of them, but they have nothing to do with the budget. And
residency, for example, to preempt local municipalities from choosing to impose a residency requirement. I mean, frankly, for our water and light utility, for example, under the budget, under their current proposal, they wouldn't be able to impose residency requirements. So if you have somebody that's working for our water and light utility, and we have a storm, for example, and they have to call those people in at the dark of 2-3 in the morning to get power restored, and if those people live in Wausau or a 45-hour radius from here, then choose to commute, that's going to be that much more of a time lag to get crucial services back up and running. Same thing goes in a snowstorm. If we have a plow truck driver that's living 2 hours, hour and a half away, not saying that that's realistic, but it certainly is possible now. If the proposal passes, that's the time it's going to take to call those people in. So why would you tell, again, a local municipality, and I know it was targeted at Milwaukee and the issues they've got down there, but why would they make that just a mandate across the state? It's just foolish.
Yeah, and this from the party that had touted itself as the party of decentralized government in favor of local control. Okay. Well,
the problem with including the policy in so much policy in the budget is they don't have enough time to be able to look at the unintended consequences. So
that's it. That's why you have debate on those issues separately.
Yes. And so when I bring up the residency piece, as local elected officials, all of us mayors across the state have said, we don't think this is a good idea. It's not positive. It isn't going to create jobs. Again, the test that we're all tasked with in terms of growing our local economies. So when they take aim at some of these things, it just doesn't create a good working relationship at times. And I would say with our local elected officials, we've got a great working relationship. But in general, the party in control has some real issues with just listening to local municipalities and trying to understand what's the common ground.
And that, to me, is just baffling because, like I said, when they were the minority party, they were going around saying, well, we believe in local control and the government closest to the people is the best. And now we're in control, and you will do what we tell you to. Mm-hmm. And it's okay. Well, let's move on. One of the things, Governor Walker says he's looking forward to signing the state's first state-run venture capital fund. The bill has cleared both houses. It creates $25 million in tax funds plus $50 million more from private sources to help companies in 5 key areas get off the ground: agriculture, information technology, medical devices, engineering, and advanced manufacturing. Mm-hmm. Your thoughts on this legislation and how it can help in your efforts to attract business investment in Wisconsin Rapids?
Well, I think any venture capital fund has to come with some sort of kind of framework and strategic plan or plan with it, just in terms of how those funds are going to be expended. Wisconsin now is finally in the game with venture capital. Many states across the country have had venture capital funds for years.
Yeah.
This, I believe, and I haven't seen the final version, but has had bipartisan support.
Yes, it has.
From people realizing that in order for economic development and job growth to happen, there has to be investment. And at times, it has to come at kind of a public-private partnership, and it has to come at times when people don't necessarily have the collateral and all that sort of thing that banks require now to start a business, right? So if you've got somebody that doesn't have a lot of collateral because of kind of the downturn, maybe they lost their job and don't have the collateral that banks require to give a loan, the venture capital fund will allow, hopefully, some of those people that might have not been able to start a business now to be able to do so. I think the other piece with the venture capital fund, it's got some significant goals with it when you talk about the areas that it's going to focus. And that, from our perspective, when it comes to IT and the agricultural piece, both of which have strong export abilities, so you're not necessarily relying on the national economy as a market, you're relying on the worldwide economy. So if you've got strengths in China, for example, or Europe, that allows us to go after those markets and export our products there as well. So I think there's a tremendous potential with the venture capital fund. My concern is, where is it going to be administered? Is it going to be administered in WEDC, the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, or another state agency? And I don't know. I haven't seen the final piece. My guess is it would come out of the WEDC. The challenge, though, I see with that, if it is the case, is just the politics that have unfolded related to WEDC and lack of oversight and transparency and all those sorts of things.
It says here a 5-member selection panel would have 2 administration representatives instead of 1. It would no longer have a member from the state's technology council.
Interesting.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting. Hopefully they learned from their creation of WEDC to get this thing done right instead of rushing it.
Right.
And ending up with the nightmare that they had, which, if you want to read something that'll make you angry, read that audit of WEDC. I mean, that was blistering.
Yes. In many holes. And I think, I want to give WEDC enough credit, and they've got a new leader now, and they're taking things in a different direction, learned from their mistakes, hopefully, and kind of cleaned house of those that have had some real issues in terms of management. Problem is, we need to be expedient. We want investment, and we need investment now because people are still looking for work, and communities are still struggling to find and create kind of new employment sectors and that sort of thing. So my hope is that the policy happens and it moves fairly quickly, but with enough due diligence, so that way things aren't done inappropriately like they were with WEDC.
It would appear, though, that we would be an area that would be attractive to this type of investment. We have for instance, when it comes to information technology, we have a very good infrastructure in place in this community.
We do with our fiber in the ground from obviously Solaris's investment, but even the employment sectors from Skyward to Renaissance Learning, even Century. I mean, those are large employers that have a significant IT department that employ many people in that space.
Okay, we got to take one more break. Hey, I'm having fun with my conversation. Obviously, you folks must be pretty happy because you haven't interrupted us this morning. But the phone line is still open at 424-2600, pound 1320 on your U.S. cellular phone as we get updated on matters of the city with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink. Back with more right after this.
Keep jobs in the heart of Wisconsin. Buy local.
Moving forward, Your Honor, as we look at all of these different issues that we've been talking about this morning, what are some of your top? Well, we got a call. We got a call coming in. So I asked and I shall receive. So let's get right to the phone. Good morning. You're on the Morning Magazine with Mayor Vruwink.
Yeah, I don't live in the city of Rapids, but I live in Wood County. How come they want to put a roundabout by the courthouse? Why don't they put something over the railroad track on West Grand Avenue so you don't have to sit so long and wait for a train?
Okay, well, we'll get to the answer.
Well, thanks for the question. The issue with the roundabout was initiated, as I mentioned earlier in the show, well over 10 years ago. And the DOT does modeling to decide what sort of intersection should be reconstructed there. And I hear all the time people don't like stoplights. So for those that don't like the stop-and-go lights, this allows them to continue to freely flow. That intersection does need to be reconstructed because the underground utilities are very old, and if we want to continue to provide a regular water supply of those residents in that area and deal with their sewer, we need to reconstruct those underground utilities.
And we should mention, I should mention too, that caller too, those residents have been promised for quite a long time that they would be getting these reconstruction, these improvements, and they've been frustrated because it's been postponed, and now they're finally going to get it because there's been some problems in that area.
And we talked about the bypass and the need to construct and all that sort of thing. The dollars that were allocated for that reconstruction also do have strings attached that we do need to spend them because we promised to spend them to reconstruct that project or reconstruct that route. Related to the bypass or any sort of overpass, if you will, related to the railroad tracks, I know that there was some modeling done and some cost estimates a number of years ago, and it wasn't feasible. There was no dollars that would, in terms of where you could spend the dollars, that was not a top priority. So I, just like you, sit for that train once in a while, and it certainly is a frustrating piece.
Let's be honest. It was going way back when that area was built, and they decided that's when they should have done some looking at that and said, do we really want a major train line going right through our downtown?
And crossing a major corridor. I know there was a lot of debate with the neighboring townships because you're going to reroute it somewhere, and the tracks are going to run somewhere. So whether they're in the city or in a township, there's always debate. It's not in my backyard type of thing, and certainly from what I understand was the case related to the siting of that railroad crossing.
Okay. We are having Cranberry Blossom Fest this weekend, and a great time to show off the town and to and the Cranberry Blossom Fest has exploded in terms of the number of events and everything going on. And then you look at what's been done at Whitterfield thanks to the Wisconsin Rapids Rafters, and they've reconstructed that into a really beautiful baseball stadium, which is filled during the summer months. In terms of tourism spending, are you happy where we're at? Do you see some other areas where we could maybe make some advancement? What's your feeling on that?
Well, the Blossom Fest was original. The origination of it was to celebrate parts of the community that are blossoming, and I think you bring up the Rafters as one of those areas that has been a strong success story. In terms of tourism spend, there's a lot of events that do bring people from outside the actual city limits, if you will, into the area, no question. But even the broader area, I know there's the CVB or Visit Wisconsin Rapids, now known, does a lot of marketing through the tourism guides and around the state to bring people to the area. So whether they're out-of-town players or fans or whatever for the baseball game that's going to be tonight at Witter Field, or anybody that's coming in to enjoy the parade this Sunday, or anything else. I mean, there's definitely a strong influx of people. I don't have a sense on the dollar spend. The CVB would definitely have that number.
But again, I always tell folks, be a good ambassador, because there might be a business owner that, and hey, this is a nice community. I enjoyed it. My family and I had a great time at your festival. And they might want to get in touch with you, but if we're rude to them, they're going to go, not interested.
Right. We always have to be good ambassadors. You never know who you're speaking to in terms of what they're here for. And I think as long as we can continue to tell a positive message, the Blossom Fest does highlight a lot of good things that are happening. Tons of things. blossomfest.org or .com, I'm sorry, is the URL if people are going online to see what's happening.
And we have brochures here, folks. Go pick up a bunch of them, because if you have visitors coming in for the festival, it has it's a really nice thing you can take along. It has a beautiful map in it, and it has the locations marked where everything's going to be happening.
Yep.
So it's a great way to give it. It's a user-friendly type of a thing to hand to a visitor and say, here, use this and have a good time.
And something fun on Friday night, anybody gets the chance.
Oh, yes. I was going to ask you about that. The mayor is going to be in the dunk tank at Hotel Mead as part of Cranberry Blossom Fest.
On Friday night.
I
think 9 o'clock, I think. Is when
that's when they got you signed up for. Okay, let's get back to the phones. Good morning. You're on the air with the mayor.
Good morning, Mayor and Carl.
Good morning.
I have a question. Some years ago, there was talk about Wisconsin Rapids possibly building an aqua center. And I believe at that time there was some kind of survey or communication with the surrounding townships and the county to see if that was a feasible item to consider. And, Mayor, do you know if anything is being done on that, or is that kind of on the back burner?
It's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. I have all the drawings and all the history in my office for the outdoor piece. It was talked about largely an outdoor facility at the time. I can say that, yes, we've had conversations. We know that our pool near Mead School is aging. In fact, it popped out of the ground this year because one corner of it because of the amount of groundwater. So if you go there, the deck is actually cracked because it popped out of the ground. So we know that the lifespan is not much longer on that facility. We've been speaking with the YMCA because they've had interest in looking at their facility on 16th and Pepper and what their future is there. So nothing's been decided, and I think you're going to hear some more late this summer, early fall about some concepts about how we can maybe bring that conversation back to light. My guess is it wouldn't be an outdoor facility because you can only use it, we know, in Wisconsin a couple months out of the year. So why build a facility that's going to cost millions of dollars when you could use it all year round for about the same investment or a little bit more? So definitely conversations have been had, and if you're interested in participating publicly when that piece happens late this summer, early fall, be sure to send your information to my office so we can keep you in the loop.
Okay, and I was thinking, too, that a year-round situation would be better.
If we're going to make the investment, we should do it right and make sure that it can be used year-round.
There seems to be a lot of use of, I think Rhinelander and a few other places that I know use theirs, year-round, and it seems to be a drawing card.
And it certainly is a nice asset.
That in our community we need a drawing card.
Especially if we're going to really walk the talk regarding young families and young adults. I know many people in those communities, that's one of the things that they point to is from a recreational asset or just something to do. It definitely has some tremendous value.
Okay.
Yes, just one quick comment. In becoming a bird city, that also is a drawing card because a lot of young families, it's really a big hobby is to do bird watching.
Bird watching, yeah. Okay. I think there's a tremendous value, and now that we can call ourselves on the map related to that. So I thank the group for pulling that together.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for your call. Okay, glad we got that update. So I guess stay tuned. There's going to be something coming forward in the fall season, and want your involvement. If this is something you're passionate about, get involved with it.
Yeah, that's the number one thing I hear from young families and young adults is beyond the summer, there's a challenge to find things to do, and we know that an aquatic center of some sort, if it was done appropriately and the right relationships and collaboration was had, whether it's municipal participation or what have you, that we definitely, it would be a nice thing, a notch in our belt related to quality of life.
And quality of life will be loud come the 4th of July in downtown Wisconsin Rapids. And again, we're going to have a pyrotechnic, musical choreographed fireworks show, electronically launched, the whole 9 yards. Are there going to be howitzers this year?
No howitzers.
Well, I got thinking the sequester probably put a... but the music will be on our FM 105.5 WRCW.
Mm-hmm.
So remember that. You'll listen to it and say, take your headphones with you and you can listen in stereo.
I know one of the pieces related to Blossom Fest, people have been, children especially, the caller called about the aquatic center. The carnival is coming back to town.
That's right. It's going to bring back a lot of memories too.
It's going to be at Witter Field, or Witter Park more appropriately, outside the fence of the Witter Field specifically. But that's something I know young families and young kids definitely are looking forward to.
Okay. Well, Your Honor, we appreciate the time. Have fun at the Blossom Fest.
All right. Thanks for the opportunity.
And with that, we'll wrap up the Morning Magazine and join CBS right after this.